Welcome to EVE 2020. It's July 15th. I am Adderall, here with a bunch of guys. Let's talk about EVE Online. We're seeing news from all over, but we probably want to do a lot of war news today. Sorry, guys that are not interested. Last time we did economic war news. This time we'll probably talk about the battle that happened yesterday in Fountain between Initiative and NCPL. But we also want to talk about other things too. We'll see what these guys are up to. So with me I have Sully, Killabee, Caleb, Dr. Spod, Fonsway, and Z-Master. These are the voices you'll be hearing. I think probably we should start with that battle in Fountain yesterday. It seemed to be important. Any of you guys witness it?
I was on Suetonia's stream. I went to bed because it was getting late and I had an early meeting today, so I couldn't stay up for it. But I was very delighted waking up in the morning and seeing the BR and everything that went down.
How bad was the damage?
I mean, not bad. Like depends on what scale you want to look at it, right? I think they lost like 40, 50 carriers. And a bunch of hacks, like a bunch of zealots died as well, and a couple of munins. I think it was a total damage of like 250 bill or something like that, ish. So yeah. It's not the end of the world wise, but it was definitely a big one. At least for us, in terms of morale, it was great because it was a good time. We got to use caps, and we were very happy with the way it all played out in the FC team.
So it had over, you can help me out here, Sully, 2,000 people in local?
Yeah, so it was reported up to, I think Spiker went closer to 2,200 people in local. I don't believe the system was reinforced.
Nope, it wasn't.
So there was maximum highlight as well as dealing with old school lag just from the sheer amount of players in the system, whilst also not being on a reinforced node. I imagine CCP devs and GMs were in the back end trying to calm the server down as it.
I doubted it at that time.
They've been very good previously at all round the clocks, just kind of making sure that if there's a big fight going on, they move unnecessary nodes off of that server, which does cause systems to drop offline or change over. But just to try and make it so that the server with this unexpected fight is not being resource bogged down by anything else. So it's trying to make as crystal clear a game as possible.
So,
yeah, so no, it wasn't reinforced. It wasn't a planned thing. I think the biggest damage we did was actually managing to kill those 2 IHubs that we ended up killing, right? The ship losses were great for us because we got to kill a bunch of stuff, which is always good for members' morale.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't like a significant amount of damage in it. But we did manage to kill 2 IHubs in the entry constellation of Fountain, which is great.
Oh, so you did get some. Do you know why the fight actually started, going back to that?
Yeah. So we were basically, what we've been doing over the last week is whenever in it, isn't up to anything, we go out with a bunch of people, we reinforce a bunch of stuff, see if we can get a fight out of it. Sometimes they flash form, we get a little skirmish. Sometimes they do nothing, which is fine as well. We reinforce a bunch of stuff. And usually what they've been doing over the last week was whenever there was a bunch of timers close to each other, they formed a big op. It's called Alpha for Init. It's their equivalent of most other alliances probably call it like a Red Pen or CTA or something. They have one level above that, which is actually called CTA for Init, but that's the one where they, like the most important thing. So they don't call that very often. But the Alpha is like the next important thing. So they've been calling Alphas all week to cover most of those timers. And we've purposefully not engaged them in any of those Alphas because it's always, they form up like 800 people. Numbers have been going down pretty rapidly in terms of what they form with those Alphas. And then we usually just make them sit around because they usually camp the hop-up gate in D4KU, which is the entry into Fountain. And they just sit there for like 4 hours, 5 hours. Sometimes they run some PvE sites while all the timers repair or their defensive photosis happens. It was the same thing yesterday. There was a bunch of timers that came out around 1800 to 1900 EVE time. And they formed an alpha at 1740 to cover those. And they've been sitting in the 4K on the hop gate for, I think it was roughly 4 hours until 2100 ish. And we saw that there were a couple of IHOPs after their stand down. We knew that they were going to stand down at around 2100, and we knew that if after an op that went on for 4 hours, most people are going to be quite fatigued and probably go to bed because it's late EU as well. It's like 11 p.m. for most people in Europe at that time. So we figured we have a pretty good shot at taking those late IHOPs by flash forming for them with everybody and just going and attacking them when they come out, which was at around 2140, I think was when the first one came out, or 2150. So about 45 minutes after Init stood down. And that's exactly what we did. We flash formed at 2140, I think, and we went out to hit those IHOPs, those 2 that came out, or 3, I think it was in total. We managed to get 2. And Init formed as well. The numbers weren't very good because, like I mentioned, most of the members probably, like EU, probably went to bed. Most of US was still at work. So it's kind of that twilight TZ in between EU and US. So numbers are quite poor for them. And also, I think it was Shines and Blurkus who ran those fleets. And obviously, Shines had been running that alpha for 4 hours before that, so he was probably a bit tired as well. And we managed to get the upper hand quite easily. And then we got a pretty good bubble off on one of the gates, managed to trap half the Init Zealot fleet in the bubble, which we then proceeded to kill. And then we dropped the dreads on those carriers that they've been using to defend stuff as well, to put fighters out and stuff. So we dread bombed those carriers. We took care of the subcap fleet, and while all that was going down, obviously there wasn't 10% tie dye. As Soli already said, it was quite a lot of tie dye. And while all that was going down, there was also the Entosis fight going on at the same time. So that's basically the night summed up.
Yeah. Well, I noticed that it was at least the announcers that were talking about it were giving it a lot of attention. Was that the first cap fight of this war?
Well, there were a couple of cap engagements before that. None of them were really big. This wasn't necessarily big either, but it was probably the biggest so far. However, there were a couple of smaller ones before, mostly in USTZ.
Mm-hmm.
USTZ is a very different environment at the moment, especially in Fountain. USTZ looks a lot different than EU does, right? Which is why so far most of the bigger fights have happened either in USTZ or going into USTZ, because that's when they're weaker and we're still pretty strong.
Oh, really? The initiative is weaker at that hour?
Yeah.
Oh.
USTZ is in its weaker time zones. And it has gotten a lot of power in AOTZ recently because of the merger from GOTG. Whatever was left of Darkness, which is primarily the core around Sword Dragon, which is a lot of AOTZ people. So in its AOTZ form-ups have been quite impressive lately, but the USTZ form-ups are pretty weak. Usually they do call goons to help them out in USTZ, which makes sense because, like I said, they're not that strong on their own in USTZ. Goons were there yesterday as well, obviously. But yeah, like we still have the upper hand in USTZ, especially yesterday where Test was there as well, right? We managed to get a good wormhole for Legacy and Co. We had Test come over, and we just dominated them pretty hard in that time zone.
Yeah, it kind of looked like it. I didn't see much of much fighting back, basically.
No, it wasn't like the well executed part of this is the fact that I like our strategy that we're running at the moment, where this is a bit like meta talk, I guess, and it could bore some people, but basically the way we look at it is we look at how many man hours it takes us to reinforce that stuff, and then we look at how much man hours they spend to defend it. And most of the time they spend like 3 times the amount of man hours to defend the timers that we create, which, if you think about it in the long run, means that they're likely, and this is just theory, that they're likely to burn out sooner than we are, because they put a lot more strain on their members than we do. We go out and reinforce a bunch of stuff. When we reinforced the entire D of the D4KU constellation, I think it took us like 1.5 hours total, but they form up an alpha from 1700 to 2100, which is 4 hours, right? So you can see right there, it's about 3 times as much time that they spent defending that we spent reinforcing. and it's just wearing them down, right? That's the idea behind it. And I think that showed quite well yesterday, because when it did come down to it, and we did flash form, there was nothing they could do about it. They had to, wait until goons arrived, which always takes some time, and even then, they were still being outnumbered by quite a bunch. So, that's how it's gonna go, I think.
Wow. One last thing on this. I heard that Initiative had gotten into super capitals. Was there any threat that those were going to come in to kind of out-escalate you guys?
Well, Brisk summed it up in whatever. I don't know which Twitch. I was just linked a screenshot of some Twitch chat clipped out this morning, which basically was Brisk saying, "We're not going to jump supers into that shit show," right? And I think that sums it up quite well. There was no way that they were going to drop supers in that time zone. Obviously, you lock them in, you look what you can get, but in that time zone, there was no way that they were going to drop them. We had about 500 dreads ready, right? So that's it's not a call you make very lightly.
I think as well the tie-dye and the performance of the system would have had an impact in any decision that would have involved dropping supers
always
and titans,
does.
because if you take a fight that's got 2,000 people and try and add another 400 or 500 supers and titans, it's just going to cause the system to begin to fail, which will result in one side losing more than the other. And unfortunately, more often than not, is the side joining late that will be the ones to perish, because you'll jump in, not load, but your ship does, kind of thing. So I think there was that impact as well.
Wow, that was a neat. It was neat to watch that battle. Anyway, watch it on 3 different streamers.
Oh, it was a good thing. Like I said, it was great for us in terms of morale. Everybody had a bunch of fun. The FC team was very happy with what they did, and it was not much to complain. I mean, yeah, tie-dye, whatever, but that's just part of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Apart from that, there was from our end, there was not much to complain about. So yeah, good night for us.
It probably helps to get some practice with Test and PL on the same field, working together, stuff like that.
Usually, that like PL, like Headliner is a very level-headed dude, and so so ProGod can be. And when it comes to this kind of stuff, then it's always yeah, it works fine. Like the coordination wasn't an issue, but yes, we definitely have to just learn how to work together. It's a very big group of people, and we all have different backgrounds and yada yada.
So what were those iHubs about? You guys picked up 2 more iHubs?
Oh, those weren't necessarily important iHubs. Those were just 2 iHubs in the D4KU constellation.
Oh, okay. That's the
which is nice to chip away, but neither of the iHubs have any major strategic importance, right? It's not like the D4KU iHub itself, for example, which is huge. Those were just 2 iHubs that are part of that constellation. It's nice to chip them away. We dropped our own iHubs in there. We can ADM them up. It allows us to drop citadels in that constellation and so on. It gives us some options basically, but the iHubs themselves weren't very strategically important.
Yeah. I've heard the ADMs. I've heard a couple things. The ADMs are coming down in a lot of different areas because I guess they can't maintain them at the level they were being maintained. So their defensive ratings of these systems is starting to go down. The other thing I've heard and seen was a lot of kill mails for structures inside a fountain. Like somebody's really tearing up fountain from the inside.
Yeah, there's a lot of smaller stuff dying, Athenors and such, and some of that stuff. But obviously, it's fair to say that Init doesn't really care about that. It's not even a meme, right? Like there's always that meme whenever somebody doesn't defend the structures, like, oh, we didn't want that anyways. But in a war like this, it's I believe that they don't care. It's fine. But for us, it's always a kill mail, and for our members, it's always nice to be able to just give them a kill mail. So yeah, it doesn't hurt to kill them for us. And they don't really care about losing them, so it doesn't. Those don't really have an effect on the whole thing, I would say.
Yeah, it's not a big strategic importance, especially for initiative that doesn't always hold on to their Sov that tight anyway.
Yeah, it's still very early in the campaign, but I think we're starting to see some progress on the fountain end, and again, I think it's just people are having a good time, and
I think
it's nice.
Last Sunday, talking with guys from the Imperium, Laz and Grath, they were saying that That is where they think the war, the first part of the war is going to be heavy. Is Fountain. That's where the breakthroughs are going to be for you guys, if there are some.
Yeah, looking at the current situation, that makes sense. There's not a lot of stuff, not that much stuff going on in period-based inquiries at the moment, mostly due to the way that geography is down there and how Goons stage their caps and how we staged ours down there. So it's all a bit more difficult down there. And then also we have a huge factor on our side up here in the Fountain Front, which is the Horde autism, because Horde just has Horde has a standing fleet every day. It's just called the Death Standing or something, which is what their SIG is called that they deployed up here. And they just have like a full standing fleet almost all day long, and people just fly around and Fountain randomly shoot something. They don't always put it into reinforce, right? But you have to keep in mind that every time we spool up on an iHub of theirs, they get a ping on their like services that goes, oh, this iHub's being reinforced, and then somebody gets to go over there and check it out, right? And then it's like, oh, it's clear, nobody's here, and then he leaves, and then we ping it again, and so on, and then we do the same stuff with structures where just a couple bombers decloak on a structure, start shooting it, they get a notification, and then we when they show up with like a 10-man gang, we cloak up, go away, they go away, and we start shooting it again, yada yada. And that kind of stuff, that's really where you can hit like people. You can just wear them down with stuff like that. And Horde has been doing an amazing job at just keeping that pressure up 24/7.
Yeah, probably a lot of guys excited to be in a war, their first one.
Oh, yeah. Horde has insane numbers at the moment. Like yesterday, or the day, actually the day before, we flash formed in EUTZ and Horde had like 2 full subcap fleets. And it's worth keeping in mind that Horde isn't even properly like, it's not even full Horde deployed. Like Horde is technically still living in drones. It's only a SIG that basically all their active PvP has joined that SIG though, but still, it's only like a SIG that they created to deploy here that is deployed. It's not even Horde proper, fully moved, basically, right? Yeah, it's insane.
I was flying through Horde space, LXQ, I think, and I was surprised at how many people were in local.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's still people at home for Horde. There's still fleets going down and fleets going up in drone space every day for the new beans. They do mine like our 16 moons and stuff like that. So there's still very much a portion of Horde that is at home, and but the majority of their PvP force is deployed here, of course.
Yeah. Well, that to me seems like a long-term advantage. Their territory is not under pressure. They can still cultivate it. They can mine it, build stuff from it.
Yep.
Whereas it's going to be a little riskier to do that in Delve, especially if PL and wormholers come in there and start looking for targets. And with Horde flying around everywhere, it's going to be easy to get spotted if you're trying to harvest. It's long term. This if this carries on a long time, that seems like that would be an advantage for the invaders. Sully, what did you see out there?
So out in on the eyes, I see an interesting tactic. Horde quite often, like Killer B was saying, they're quite often camping the hot pip gate. Horde, which may seem a bit strange that the hostile attackers are camping the gate, but at the same time, Initiative liked to before Horde got all fully settled in the move, and I see the same thing in TCAG and 49 where Goonswarm are just permanently camping the Stargate with various different fleets. It's been reasonably quiet today, but since then there's been a few gangs roaming through where they'll just set up on the gate, set up some bubbles, and try and interrupt anyone trying to pass through.
Yeah. Well, a lot of opportunities out there if you want to sit around and gate camp. That's like fishing with a bunch of friends. You sit there talking, waiting for things to come by. Like a fishing hole.
I have to say, having done many gate camp loops as well, there's something that's oddly relaxing about it, because although you could sit there for a few hours and not get anyone come through your Stargate, it's just a time where you can just sit on comms with your friends, and you just end up chatting about completely random stuff, and then you get excited for a bit when someone jumps through, and then you just go back to chatting as you were.
Yeah,
I agree. Like after, obviously dominating other FCs is the most fun I have in the game, but apart from that, gate camping is probably the most fun activity I have in the game, because you just hang out with your friends, with your corp or your dudes on Mumble or whatever. You talk, and every now and then you get a frag, right? Or maybe a small gang comes by and you have a little skirmish with them, yada yada. It's real fun, and you don't actually have to do anything. You can easily watch a movie on the side, or watch some TV, and then when something happens, tab in, where So that's why I love gate camping. I really do. It's probably, yeah, it's my second favorite activity in the game.
It's a bonding experience.
I think it's cool. Like, it's something that I miss a lot about PL. Something that is that at my time in PL, it was a lot more a thing than it is in NC Dot. Where in PL there was usually always like a crew of people that would just hang out on Mumble and do stuff together. When we were in FCon area, I was camping at gate of FCon. Then when the Rockwoods were changed, we were just sitting and mining and talking, and that doesn't really exist in NC that much. There's no like, no like standing fleet or something like that in NC. It's usually just for pings. You get to meet the people. And that's something I really miss about PL, just hanging out on comms and doing whatever. Like, literally, it doesn't matter what we do, just hang out and do stuff together, right?
Yeah. So I've also heard there's a Goon Swarm campaign to try to find FCs to switch sides. Now, I don't only one source on that, but have you been approached to switch sides?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
You obviously said no. Do you know anything? Any other people have been approached to switch sides?
No. I don't think it's being talked about much. It's not the approach you would expect. It's not like some Diplo convoed me and was like, "I offer you trillionis." Just that's not really how it went. I have friends in Goons, or I have people in Goons that I'm cool with, and they just poke me and go like, "Hey, don't you want to come play with the underdogs?" And they just play the sort of the friendly way. Just go like, "Yo, don't you want to come play with us? You're going to have a better time, so many more targets to shoot and so on," right? It's not like I'm being formally approached with a money offer or something like that. And it's cool. It's kind of like a fun thing. Yeah, but at this point in time, I'm not considering joining Goons.
Yeah,
that's what I told them as well.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if they get any defectors. That would be interesting, seeing fleet commanders move to the other side. It seems like fleet commanders are going to play a big role in this. They play a big role all the time, but especially in this one, where it just looks like the Imperium has less fleet commanders than they would want in this situation. I may be wrong about that, but
I would agree personally from my POV. The Imperium dudes might disagree, but I think that the quality and the quantity of FCs, we have an advantage on our side at the moment. But with people like Last rejoining Goons, Elo being there, Elo actually did run a fleet last night. He was the dude that I think he caught up to the fleet and then took over or something when they were in Fountain. So those do matter a lot. Like, though, if they start FCing actively and regularly and throughout throughout a longer term, this can actually be a big factor, because they are both very, very strong FCs. It's the same, Penif's Corp joined Goons, which is always interesting.
Penif Smash.
Yeah. And Penif, I don't know how active he is currently. I haven't actually talked to Penif in a long time, but I still say that in my point of view, Penif is probably the best hunter and the best hunter, I would just call him, in the game that I know. Like, the time I've been flying with him when we were both in PL, the dread bombs that he set up, the stuff that he did, the way he did it, even Omega comes close. I would say Omega did a fantastic job with his crew, whatever he did in Delph, right? Like, Omega was also up there, but to me, Penif is still number one, because Penif just, some of the dread bombs I witnessed, or I was invited to join, or FC even, by him, that was just some of that stuff that happened there. I just, it was magic, right? So I have a huge respect for him. And if he is active and he puts that potential or that talent he has into Goons, then that can be that can be huge. So that's always something to look out for.
Yeah, my not to rain on that parade, but my information is that he's not very active. And
that could be. I honestly, again, I don't know. I didn't really follow the activities lately, so I don't know how active he is. But I'm just saying, if he would be active, it could be a big deal.
He's a good player. He can set up bait traps and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, DW, right? DW Tech, the dread bomb in the former Goon staging, that was him. There was a gigantic dread bomb on CU2 in, I think it was FR Tech, somewhere in SU2 space when they were still down south, right? So there were a couple of dread bombs, and then also before that, during what would be, I don't know how many supers he caught leaving leaving Decline rather. That was all him and his crew, right? Setting up all these traps, having Hictors logged off in every possible low sec system you can jump to from Decline. And then whenever a super would log in and jump out, they would log on all those Hicks and probe them down and yada. It's crazy. Like the amount of effort that goes into that, setting all of that up. It's a gigantic commitment, and he always put that in. And that's that's something I respect a lot about people in Eve.
Well, we'll see if
there's so many people that don't put any effort in.
Yeah, we'll see if he emerges in there. But he did move over to he was in Snuff, right?
Snuff,
yeah. He moved out of PL into Snuff. He's been a long time in PL, but then he moved into Snuff, and then I believe went. Either there was a joke, he went to Conifers, or it wasn't a joke, he went to Conifers, but he disappeared for a while, and now they're emerging in Goonswarm. All right, cool.
I can say as well, he's very good at hunting in low sec because he almost caught my Titan twice.
Oh, you actually, what's cool is you got away twice. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, just
barely. All right, so if you were watching Talking in Stations yesterday, we had CCP over, and we had to actually end up streaming on their channel because our engineer McLeod just couldn't get any throughput, so we couldn't broadcast, and my equipment was down to be able to broadcast as well, or it would have come out a little bit wonky. So CCP stepped in at the last second, and Convict streamed from his laptop. So it looked a little funny, and we were on the CCP channel as opposed to Talking in Stations channel, but it was a Talking in Stations show, and we were able to go through a lot of material yesterday. Any of that stuff catch your eye?
I just watched a new trailer, and I thought it was cool, but that's really all I got from that.
Yeah, check it out. There's a lot of information. I think Rise just...
Oh yeah, I heard about that. Some dudes was talking about how he said they were going to look at command ships, or are looking at command ships at the moment, which can be very interesting. And then some other stuff is what he pointed on as well.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway for me was, the command ship is a big deal. But then he talked about, maybe I shouldn't blow this out of proportion, but he talked about how they're starting to have speed creep because they're increasing speed on different ships. So they might look at speed in the future.
Please.
Yeah. So I thought that was
great.
That was pretty interesting. Try to make some choices or some offsets, like, maybe if your ship is moving slower, it's more accurate or hits harder. Who knows? But so it's a benefit to go fast, but it's not the only benefit, because right now it is. The only benefit is to go fast.
It would be great because the current meta is so, like, most people run MWD doctrines like Munins, and you just really can pin somebody down. It's very, very hard to pin them down. So, usually, like, if you have a Munin versus Munin fight, it's just whichever side loses all their logi first just leaves, and there's nothing you can do about it. Because even if you get a Dictor bubble on them, they just keep burning with 2,400 meters a second, and they're out of the bubble in a couple of seconds. You get to kill maybe a couple more Munins, but that's it, right? Mm-hmm. And I would really love to see some more. I would love to see the brawling meta come back, the Armor Hack T3 cruisers that we did in 2015, stuff like that. I really wish would be viable again.
See the Proteus in use again.
Yeah, well, not necessarily Proteus. I would love to be Zealots.
Right? Oh,
Legion. It was Legions and Proteuses, right? But I don't think those will come back because they're pretty meh at the moment.
Yeah.
But Zealots could be a very, very viable option. Zealots are already, at the moment, they're like okay, I guess. But if there's a significant nerf to Munins, they could be viable. And I love Zealots, so that would be cool. Or maybe beat battleships even, man. Like, how great would it be if people actually had battleship doctrines again?
Yeah, right. They made the battleships faster to travel through space, but I don't think they made their thrusters any faster, and they're big ships anyway. But it would be neat to see them kind of almost like Marauders be more powerful when they're still. I don't know, but that was something to look forward to. No details on that. The big news coming out of yesterday was that the tomorrow, actually, 'cause today's Wednesday, so Thursday is the beginning of the proving grounds, the new proving grounds. So they were talking about that. They're going to have a leaderboard. So there's a lot of, and I think this first one is cruiser on cruiser. Is it 1v1, I think, or 2v2? And then they're gonna mix it up. So each filament's gonna have a different combination of fight that you can have or participate in. So they'll constantly be changing like what kind of fights you can grab. Yeah, it's gonna be a 2v2, I think, cruiser level. So that's gonna start. Right now you can get the filaments, but the competitions don't really start until tomorrow. Then we'll just call it a graveyard, but memorial site for players that have passed on is coming in on the 21st, I think. That's a really beautiful statue that shoots a light into the sky. And it turns out they have something like that in Iceland, so it's pretty interesting. And then another big change was the ESS is going to change. It's going to be more of a permanent structure. I don't know that much about the ESS. Anybody else?
So the current way the ESX works is it takes a percentage of the bounties claimed in a system from killing NPC rats and puts it into, I know one of them does it into a token form. Over time as well, those tokens grow. I personally have managed to loot one that contained 1.4 billion because it was left there for a few days with a couple of supers ratting in system.
You got some kind of luck with loot, man.
But also over time, it also generates loyalty points for the specific faction it is. So a Caldari one generates Caldari loyalty points. And again, the longer you leave it, the more and more it gains. At the moment, they're very rarely used just because not many people like the loyalty point side of it, as well as if you are unable to defend it, then a hostile entity like myself can come through and start to claim it. Unless you can kill me or drive me off, then I will just get the stuff. And a lot of groups feel that's pretty much their hard-earned money is just going to be into someone who's drumming through their space at the right time. So I believe the new system is just going to take what works with the old, so the bounty split, the bounty siphon and growing over time, but just make it so it's present in every system in nullsec rather than you get the option to choose to deploy it.
No, thanks. Fonsui, can you turn off slow mode on Twitch here? I don't know why that's on.
Yeah, I took it off.
Thanks. I don't know why that was on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the message that you see over there, that was me disabling it a few minutes ago.
Got it. Okay. And also, I changed our title this morning, but I didn't hit done. So I didn't realize that it hadn't gone through. So clearly CCP isn't here today. They were here yesterday. And that video will be posted later today. So anyway, that video contained a bunch of stuff because it was their Quadrant 3 preview, and it's called Zenith. That's the name of it. So it's going to be pretty interesting. I think what we were looking for from them, if I'm not mistaken, was more stuff for nullsec, but they didn't seem to have anything specifically for that, unless the ESS is that. So yeah, check out that show. We'll talk about it tomorrow in more detail when the Proving Grounds actually comes out.
Proving Grounds, I think, is quite interesting in that I'm keen to see what kind of group formats come out. Whether you will get the 2v2 Demos with blasters, which obviously with the recent buff and the last quadrant can output a rather large amount of damage, or if you're going to start seeing more kitey groups and maybe an ECM Blackbird with something else. Be interesting to see the logic that comes out and what people think of outside the box.
Yeah, for now, yeah, in chat, Elder made a good point. The holes are very restricted right now. There's a specific list of, and they're all Tech 1 and no Logi.
It's no Logi cruisers, but it doesn't restrict
Yeah.
Logi modules.
Yeah, you can put the modules on, but yeah, the holes are no Logi holes.
Yeah, thanks for covering. I was trying to figure out a noise gate. All right, so we've talked about the war. We've talked about the show that happened yesterday. I think probably we're burying the headline today. There's big news coming out of Providence, and it looks like they're losing some territory, some defectors. Anyone want to talk about that?
I suppose that's my point to speak up, isn't it?
Oh, hey,
That's
Marv.
why I invited you.
Let me turn you up. So what's going on in Providence, Marv?
So the Alliance of Care Factor, they've been having a bit of troubles over the past couple of months or years or something due to like psyops from Reds and all sort of stuff. So over the past coming weeks and months, a couple of corporations have left Providence and left Care Factor to defect over to the Reds, who since then just kind of died out. And so today,
Yeah, they dropped to zero.
there was so
Wow.
there was a director level spy. And they pushed the big no-no button.
Director level spy. That's something we used to see a lot a few years ago. It's a little rarer now. Well, that's too bad. So what's going to happen with them? Will they reconstitute? Do you know?
It's too early to know what's going to happen there. Like that's above my pay grade, basically. But I would imagine that the stragglers or the people that were left high and dry would be reconstituted into the block somewhere. I would imagine, depending on what those members wanted to do.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant hit for them. How does it affect Provi Block in general?
Most of that area over there was, for at least for me personally, it was not space that I pretty much went like ever. So I don't really know what it means for the region, but I'm not sure if it was. I don't know if it was significant or not.
Mm-hmm.
It is a bit of an out of the loop kind of pipe that block of systems that were lost. It's not exactly a core block, but I imagine there's still some value there, of course.
I've engaged PvP against Provi Block before, and I would say Care Factor is a significant power. Not one of the major ones, but they are obviously a good portion of Provi Block's power. Not one that should be just written off and ignored.
That was Rich talking just now, and before that was Spod, and before that was Marv. We don't have our talk bubbles up so you can see who's talking, but that's who it was. Well, is this the end for Provi? Let me put it that way. Like after all these years, or are they going to survive this?
There'll never be an end to Provi.
There'll never be an end to Provi. Like throughout 15 or so years, there's always been challenges coming to the region. There was things before my time. There was the PL, the Pandemic Legion thing. They tried to do things. We got kicked out for a couple of months, but I'm not exactly sure what happened politically, but we just kept being mosquitoes and gnatting on things until they went away. And so then we got Provi again, which is where the hangers-on of RC were born.
The hangers on. That's the Wrecking Crew. They live up in this, I guess, northeastern area.
That's the thing. This Wrecking Crew now owns those ex Care Factor systems, all but one, I believe.
Yeah,
So my-
they scrambled a whole bunch of stuff and they put TCUs on all of the care factor systems, so less bill for us to pay, I guess.
My only concern would
that's one
be,
way of looking at
at
it.
least, I'm no military genius by any means, but Provi block as a whole no longer controls any entry point into Providence except for KBP. Is that not? That worries me. If I was to try and get in there.
We
Well,
generally don't use like gates for supplies anyway. Like occasionally we
Sure.
might go to low sec and we'll take fleets out through gates, but most of the time we don't use gates in order for our supply lines or our operations. So, meh.
I suppose that is the question is as well, now that RC owns those particular blocks of space, will they be able to utilize them? They are out of the way for them.
I got no doubt that they'll try. Like, it might be spreading them a bit thin. Like, they've got two opposing sides of the thing. Like, they do have jump bridges from XTAC-R to over there, so that's either a hell of a lot of fuel. I got no doubt that they're going to try and utilize them, and they probably will. It's just spreading them thinner, making them easier targets, I guess.
Potentially. I suppose it depends on which way you're looking at it. So it's either they're either spreading their forces out or they're surrounding Providence on an offensive. So that's one of those questions that will never get answered until it's over.
Yeah, these are things above my knowledge.
yeah, well, I guess we'll wait and see what happens with Providence. They lost an alliance that gave the territory over to Wrecking Crew, so we'll see what happens there.
There is further concerns in the north
What's that?
of Provi Block, as there's one of the soft holding alliances in the north part of it is leaving. I'm not sure why they're leaving or where they're going. All I know is they're currently in sort of evac mode. So there's, to be unfortunately candid and mean, it's very much cracks forming. Don't think I'll go beyond that before I set them on fire.
Yeah. Well, don't jump into that. All right, it'll be interesting. We'll be watching Providence and seeing what happens. All right, well, that is all the information we have today. There's going to be more tomorrow. We'll go over some of the new stuff that comes out tomorrow, and we will see you then. For now, let's go to probably Ron. Let's have a look. Yeah, let's visit Ron. He'll catch you up on what's going on in the war. Thanks everyone for being here, and thanks for watching. We will see you tomorrow. And look for that CCP podcast. We're going to put it out podcast. We're also going to put it out on YouTube. We'll do that today. And lastly, please join our Patreon if you like this content. To keep it going, we want to see Patreons. So please subscribe to patreon.com/Matterall and support this programming so that it can continue. All right, thanks.